Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the Destruction All-Stars official tier list. That is the only one that is correct. Everyone else who makes a tier list is wrong. Mine is the one to go by. Just kidding. Obviously this is very situational to who you are as a player, what cars you want, what abilities you want, but I think overall in general I think I've got a good idea of how the tier list should be. And that's what we're going to get into. So hit the like button if you like this kind of thing. If you're enjoying Destruction All-Stars, let me know down below in the comment section. Who is your favourite character? I can't speak properly. Subscribe, hit the little bell, notification bell. Follow me on Twitter, links in the video description. But let's just get into this. I'm going to do it in order of when you pick your characters. Like top left, top right, next one down, so on and so forth. So first and foremost, we have Ultimo Barracado. So I'm going to put Ultimo Barracado in the A tier. And the reason why I'm doing this is that his car, when he has his breaker, can withstand a hell of a lot of damage as long as you're hitting people head first on to damage them. And if they hit you head first too, you can last a very long time in your vehicle breaker because of the sheer amount of reduced damage his car takes during the breaker. Now his on-foot breaker isn't great. I think if it was a really good one, he probably would have been pushed into the S tier, but for the most part his car vehicle taking damage, dealing damage is really good, and I think he deserves to be in the A tier. Next up we have Genesis. Now Genesis I put into the B tier. I've got them all written down here so I can remember where to place them. And the reason why she goes into B tier is just simply because her on-foot breaker is ridiculous. She runs super fast and can clear the entire map within a couple of seconds, which means you can get away from people, you can escape from people, but on top of that as well, you can run across the map and find a car where there might not be one nearby you. When you get ejected from your car, you can go and find another car, beat other people to that car, and continue playing. Her actual car vehicle breaker is also really good. It's the same kind of thing. She travels really fast, which means if you hit an enemy, you're going to absolutely obliterate them. But I feel like it's sometimes a little bit too fast where you can't really control or move your car where you need to hit someone. It can be a little bit finicky, it can be a little bit frustrating, but I think overall she's a good solid all-round character and definitely deserves to be in at least the B tier. So next we have Lupita, which I know is a character that a lot of people use, but I'm going to put her in the B tier, and only because I believe the fire in this game doesn't do as much damage as it probably should. It's good to ignite people, it's good to set people on fire, but I don't think it does enough damage to warrant actually using this character over someone else who could do much more damage with their vehicle breaker. But I do think Lupita is an all-round incredibly good character. Everything about her: fast, speed, handling, really good. Her on-foot breakers also really good as well, but again, fire needs to do more damage in this game, and when it does, I would put her definitely in A tier, potentially even in S tier. So right now she goes into B tier just because fire doesn't do as much damage as I believe that it probably should. Next up we have Shift. Now Shift can go all the way down here in the F section. F for failure, F for whatever you want to say, but I believe in this game the invisibility perks that he has are just useless, just terrible, absolutely no point in them whatsoever. The only advantage Shift gains from literally anything is that when he's invisible on foot, he can jump onto a car and start to hijack them and potentially be able to wreck someone or take over their car a little bit easier than everybody else. But realistically in this game, if someone knows how to wiggle their stick, it doesn't matter whether you're invisible or not, you are getting thrown off that car. Also, the car going invisible, pretty much pointless in my opinion, and him going invisible, you can still get hit by everything, you can still take damage, and most important, what's the advantage there? Oh, you can sneak up on someone and hit them. The game is about getting involved, destroying people, going mental, going crazy. Being invisible is kind of like the opposite of that, where it's not needed and it doesn't really have anything useful behind it. Now, if he did more damage when he's invisible, and I don't actually know if he does, but I don't think he does, if he did significantly more damage because he was invisible, or if he hit someone from behind like a stealth hit, then he would probably go up into C/B. But right now I think he's just terrible. Just absolutely terrible. Next up we have Blue Fang, and our first S tier, obviously. Ridiculously good character, stupidly overpowered in terms of attacking people and doing damage in his vehicle breaker. His saw blades, basically if you hit anyone square on, whether it's on their side, their back, their front, you will just completely obliterate them and destroy them. There's no way of avoiding it, you will die, and that is super OP. The saw blades, I think, last, if you're going to go with how OP he is, I think they last a little bit too long. So you can either reduce the damage or reduce the chance of killing someone and keep the time the same, or reduce the time and have him be an absolute beast at destroying people. Blue Fang is really good. If I was going to put him in the S tier, I think he would go probably in the middle of 2 other characters, which we'll get to a little bit later. So the S tier only has 3 characters in my opinion, and Blue Fang definitely deserves his space there because he is incredible. Next we have Boxtop, who is our first entry into the C tier list. Now his actual vehicle breaker, I don't understand. You know, you launch a drone, and when you smash into people, it's supposed to attach to that car and then fire like damaging explosive rockets or whatever into the car. Now, I have absolutely no indication or awareness that this ever happens when I'm using Boxtop. I crash into people, the drone still seems to be flying around, sometimes it disappears off my screen, but it doesn't indicate to me that it's doing much damage or doing anything at all, really. So I think overall, like, especially with his on-foot breaker, I can slip him into the C tier, but I think if he didn't have his on-foot breaker where he puts down, you know, like traps on the floor for people to run into, I think he would definitely go in the F tier. I don't even think he needs an improvement in terms of damage or whatever the drone is supposed to do. I personally just need some indication that it's actually working, that it's actually happening, that the thing that I've tried to do is happening. Now maybe there's some sort of small indication on the screen somewhere, but in my opinion that's not enough because there's so much going on screen, you can't really look at everything like that. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I have hit markers pop up every time the drone attacks someone that it's attached to, something like that. But for me, Boxtop, C tier. Next we have Fuego, who is also a C tier character in my opinion. His design is one of the best in the game though, and his car vehicle design is incredible. Absolutely love the way he looks. But in my opinion, he's a C tier because, again, for the same reason as Lupita, the fire does not do enough damage to enemies. But the thing with Fuego is that you have to smash into people and ignite them with fire, and for some reason that seems really inconsistent when I play as him. Sometimes I barely touch someone and they catch on fire, other times I absolutely plow through them and nothing happens. There's no ignite, there's no fire, and I don't think I've ever actually killed anyone with the fire themselves. So for me, again, I think fire needs to be increased in damage to make both of these characters a little better. But for me, Lupita gets a little bit higher because of her on-foot breaker. Fuego's is fine, it's nothing dramatically good, so he goes into the C tier. So next up we have Hannah, who is an interesting character for me. I initially put her in the C tier list because her car, basically, it's like Blue Fang's, where you could cut through people and annihilate them instantly, but it seems super inconsistent, where you either specifically need to hit people in the side of the car for it to actually kill them, but sometimes, you know, I've drove into people at full speed and it just doesn't do anything. It also doesn't last long enough in my opinion. It runs out really quickly. Yeah, it replenishes quite quickly too, but in my opinion it just needs to last a little bit longer so you can push her up in the tier list. But I am going to move her to the B tier list because her on-foot breaker is ridiculous. You activate it, it lasts for a long time, and anyone you barge instantly dies, and that is obviously very useful for when you're running around. So she's definitely going in my B tier list. So Ratu, already made a video about this, how ridiculously overpowered this character is, and definitely is, in my opinion, the most useful, powerful character in the game. Now I'm saying this because her vehicle breaker is absolutely ridiculous and is the ultimate comeback mechanic. You can go from 70 points to 120 points in one vehicle breaker. Now her vehicle breaker is obviously like a big bomb grenade, and anyone caught in the area of effect will just instantly die. It's just stupidly overpowered. The one thing about it is that her actual breaker doesn't replenish naturally. You have to hit people to get it to fill up, but realistically that's not that difficult in this game right now. And I think even if you don't use the breakers or whatever, her car is really good, strong, good defense, and on top of that as well, it also handles really well. So Ratu, for me, definitely the most overpowered character in the game, especially for a comeback mechanic. I think Blue Fang is also right there with her because he is a consistent, constant attacking threat. But for me, Ratu is just too good. Just too good. Next, we have Angelo Avello, who is going in my C tier, and the only other, not my C tier, my F tier, and the only other person to get into the F tier. These two, in my opinion, are not very good, great characters. If you use them and you're good with them, great for you. For me, they're not that good. Angelo Avello's vehicle breaker, basically you have to lock onto someone to do more damage to them. Now the lock on itself is a little bit finicky, and even if you then get to lock onto someone, they could drive away and then you're chasing them down and chasing them to try and do extra damage to them. And that's an issue because people can drive away really quickly. You know, they can get caught up in a whole other group of enemies and you can't get through to the person you're trying to damage. I think it's not that great of, you know, a vehicle breaker. I'd have liked to see him just like fire rockets or something that locks onto someone. That would be just way more fun and just more consistent than trying to lock onto someone and chase them. And then also, you know, you could lock onto someone and then they get ejected from their car and then they just run away and you can't really do anything for like to get them, to attack them. So I think, in my opinion, not that great of a vehicle breaker. I can't even remember what his on-foot breaker is, but I'm assuming it's not that good because I put him in the F tier. The next we have Twinkle Riot, and for, you know, character design and the fat ass, we're going into the S tier. But for character wise, we are going into the B tier. And I think this car is better than people think it is. You know, it's fast, it's nimble, it can turn really well, its handling's really good, and it can do a lot of damage and also take a lot of damage. But the vehicle breaker itself is pretty good because what it does is it basically activates, let's say, like a force field type thing, and anyone who hits you damages them. Now if they hit you really fast and really hard, you can instantly annihilate someone. So it's kind of like a little tank, takes some damage, but it's also fast, nimble, and can handle very well. Unfortunately, it's just not as good as other characters, so going into my B tier. Next up we have Jian, who is going into my S tier and is the only other person going into the S tier. Now this one was a little bit difficult for me because I could not make my mind up on it, because while it has good damage, the vehicle breaker, I think it's the Morning Star it's called, it can be a little bit finicky to hit people with it. But once you learn when to activate it, when you're nearby people, this can work as an incredible attack but also an incredible defense. If you're like, see someone coming at you and you activate this, it's going to just absolutely annihilate them. I also put Jian here because the on-foot breaker is also really good. Like Boxtop, you leave like kind of things on the floor for mines for cars to run into. So I think overall, from top to bottom, Jian is one of the better characters in the game. I initially put them in the A tier, but I thought, no, I think it's S tier, because if you get going and you're very lucky, you can absolutely shred people apart with the vehicle breaker and just annihilate everybody. So for me, S tier. So next up we have Harmony, who is also going in my B tier list, at least right now. So her car is really strong, really good defense, really good attacking. Really good for gridfall, because her actual vehicle breaker is like a sonic wave and it blasts people away and they can go flying up in the air across the map. And on something like gridfall, they can fall off the map and die. So for that reason, I think I'm going to squeeze her into my A tier, because she's got a very unique, interesting vehicle breaker, which specifically really helps on a very certain game mode. But overall, the actual vehicle breaker is good. It does damage. It clears out areas of people who are around you and stuff. So I think I'm going to slip her into my A tier. But realistically, somewhere between B and A for me personally. Next up, we have Xander, who is going into my C tier list as well. So Xander is a lot like Angelo Avello. God, the name's so hard to say. I get confused with it every single time. Where he does more damage to the person that he's locked onto, but for him, his isn't like a single target lock. It's whoever you're looking at it's like a scan system. So when you're looking at someone, then you connect onto them and you can do more damage to them. So it's a little bit easier to chase down the enemies and do more damage to them, because you can change as you're going through. And also his on-foot his on-foot breaker really helps teammates and stuff as well to see through walls, see where enemies are and stuff. So that's why he's a little bit higher into the C tier over F tier Angelo Avello, even though they have very similar breakers. Now this is just like a first impressions of all these characters as well, so you know, the more I use them, they might change around in the tier list a little bit, but for right now, that's where Xander lies, in the C tier. Right, next up we have Muna, who isn't a character I used very often, but I am going to put them in the B tier, potentially A, maybe, if they change a little bit about her character. So the vehicle breaker basically makes her into a little badass little tank. The more damage you do, the more shrapnel you attach to your car to defend yourself with. Now, if they made this a little bit more forgiving, where when you destroy an enemy, you get more shield than you currently do, she would definitely be in the A tier, 100%. But when you destroy people and you get that shrapnel, you become a little tank and can take a lot of damage. I have found great success in using her just in general. So I think definitely B tier. If they were a little bit more forgiving with having the shrapnel attached to her, then it would definitely be A tier. And last but not least, we have Sgt Rescue, who is one of my favorite characters right now and is going into my A tier, just simply because both his vehicle breaker and his on-foot breaker can be extremely disorientating. Now, when you're in a car and you get hit by his vehicle breaker, you can't see anything, you can't do anything. It's incredibly annoying, incredibly frustrating, which means when you're playing as him, you could be ridiculously overpowered with him. Unfortunately, that's all he really does in terms of a vehicle breaker, so he doesn't really do any extra massive crazy damage, but he's just incredibly annoying, and I feel like definitely needs to be in the A tier section, just as well because his car is a tank too. Like it's got a lot of damage, it's got a lot of defense. Overall, I think is definitely an A tier. So those are where I would place these characters into a tier list. Let me know down below if you agree with these or disagree with these, or where you would move specific characters to other places. If any of these are your favorite characters that are on lower tier list, I'm not trying to say you're bad at the game or that you can't win with these characters or that these characters are terrible for everyone. This is my perspective, my tier list on what I think the characters are. So I hope that was fun. I hope I hope you have differing opinions to me also, and I want to hear about them. Hit the like button, subscribe, comment, all that kind of good stuff. Follow me on Twitter, link is in the video description. Thank you for watching. I've been easynow. You guys have been awesome.